Okay, I don't think a Christian ought to have the word coincidence in their vocabulary. And so today's lesson is about uh, Demetrius, and he's labeled as an inciter, not an insider, an inciter, Inciter. And um, and so uh, this quarter we're talking about good lessons from bad guys, and so we're gonna and what we've been knowing relating over the weeks is how do we as Christians react to this? And we've gotten some pretty good discussion. And, sometimes we feel like we have to say something, and other times sometimes it's just a matter of and it's not just a matter, but it's praying over the situation. But in Acts 19, okay, what happens? Paul is at Ephesus, and he's been there, and I didn't go back and research, which I probably should have, to see how long he was there when these events about to happen. But I would say he was pretty much there long enough to have an impact because he is, as we're going to see, a guy named Demetrius is getting pretty upset at the situation. And what's happening is there's this big temple, the temple to Artemis. Now, the Artemis was started off as a Greek god that the Romans adopted, and this temple that they had, the ruins to it, they're still there, the ruins to it, and all the foundations and some pillars, but basically it was one of the wonders of the world at the time, and it was big enough to be as large as a football field, including the two end zones at the both ends. So it was a huge temple. And as you can imagine, something that big, they're going to have a lot of people taking care of it, a lot of jobs, and the people that were coming there, the market around the place, but it was all devoted to this one pagan god. And so Demetrius was a silversmith that profited from the activity around this temple. And what Paul did, as Paul does, Paul would go in and, he was very shrewd. He went by God's direction, and he didn't come in and just kind of, hell and brimstone type preaching. He probably just started, discussing with them, and brought a lot of people and converted them from, hey, here's this pagan god that can't do anything, to the real God. And so a lot of people were becoming believers. Well, when they're believers and believe in God, the sales goes down for Demetrius. So let's read there in verse 23. And I would like to see what other people's translations are. I'm looking at the New American Standard Version here, and I've read but in 23, it says, about that time, there arose no small disturbance concerning the way. So what do some other translations say? Great disturbance, okay. Huh? There is trouble, okay. What else? Anybody else? Okay. I could see, I look around, people pulling down their masks to talk. I think it's kind of neat, and in a lot of translations it says no small disturbance, and to me that's kind of, is that what you're saying? No small disturbance. So it's kind of like a negative round the way, but it does emphasize. I think it emphasizes the turmoil or the trouble that's coming their way. Okay, no small disturbance concerning the way, for a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, who made silver shrines of Artemis, was bringing no little business to the craftsmen. These he gathered together with the workmen of similar trades and said, men, you know that our prosperity depends upon this business. And you see and hear that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, this Paul has persuaded and turned away a considerable number of people, saying that gods made with hands are no gods at all. And so do you think Demetrius was a faithful, devoted, devout follower of Artemis. He's a follower of his business, exactly, Right. And 27, it said, not only is there danger that this trade of ours fall into disrepute, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis be regarded as worthless, and that she whom all of Asia and the world worship should even be dethroned from her magnificence. Okay, so when you have an attraction, okay, let's talk about, we're talking, there's been this over the last several months, the ark is in Kentucky, right? They built in Kentucky. So how many people, or even from Greenlawn, how many people have just migrated over there? And, do they just go there, pay the fee, whatever it is, and go look at it and then come home? No, they stay in hotels, they eat at restaurants, they get, it's a boom for the economy for the city. So not only is the temple, losing money, it's highly possible that, or more than likely, that Ephesus, which is a mecca of trade, Ephesus is kind of hurting from this as well. But Demetrius is the one that's bringing it to everybody's attention, or just kind of saying, hey, we're going downhill because of Paul. And when they heard this, they were filled with rage. They began crying out, saying, great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Now, did Demetrius stand up there and say, we need to march? We need to demonstrate. We need to do, cause a riot. Does it say that he did that? No. But he was there and he caused some confusion, and it started, and the city was filled with confusion, and they rushed with one accord into the theater, dragging along Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions. And probably the reason they didn't pull Paul in there is because they couldn't find him at the moment. So they pulled the ones that they knew were his traveling companions. And Paul wanted to go into the assembly. The disciples would not let him. And also some of the Asiarchs, who were friends of his, sent to him and repeatedly urged him not to venture into the theater. So then, this is interesting now, in 32. So then some were shouting one thing and some another, for the assembly was in confusion, and the majority did not know for what cause they had come together. How often does that happen? Okay, even in today, how many or do we know? There's maybe a riot and insurrection or any type of chaos going on, and we're just sitting there shouting because everybody else is. Don't know what's going on. So what happened here? Now, why was Demetrius so concerned with Paul's teaching? It's because it was hurting his business. How could he approach this differently? How could Demetrius approach this a little bit differently than what he did? Okay, have a sit down with Paul. I don't know if that would have worked out in his favor, of course, but yeah. Well, it said that he was a silversmith, okay, and he was making these images of Artemis. So, how many times, look at the, those people that invented the rotary phone, okay, people that invented the rotary phone, or they probably made their money at their time, but well, unless you're on display in a museum, who has a rotary phone? Oh, you use it? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. But, we can talk about all kinds of inventions over the time. In fact, a client of mine were talking about the cell phones that we have now, and she goes, and I think the flip phones are starting to come back into style now a little bit, but they come and go. But how many times we had flip phones in their time, and we liked them, but you can hardly find them anymore. So things come along. So when you see your business might be going down, what's the thing that you ought to do? Is you try to hang on as long as possible. And there's a lot of in business. There's a lot of times that businesses have tried to hold on and make this force when they can act. And the ones that make it are the ones that see what the market's doing and adapt, huh? Diversify. Yeah. Okay. So could Demetrius have said, "Hey, yeah, this is coming, and this is maybe I ought to diversify and uh, do something else with my silversmith uh, talents." But that's one thing he could have done, but he didn't. And when I was reading this story and studying about him, I noticed that he was able, in just a few words, from what we can tell, is just incite people just by his words. Okay, and sometimes we feel like, dude, there was a guy I used to work with that was very talented at doing something like that. Very talented. He was able to, with just a few words and just a way he approached it, and the way, and before you knew, you're kind of caught in to his way of thinking. You want to step back to wait a minute, and you think about it. It was all selfish. It was all so he could benefit. So he could benefit uh, uh, from his uh, from the situation, and he made it look like, hey, everybody's benefiting from this. Well, yeah, we'd benefit from it if we went along with his idea. Okay, and uh, and so very, very manipulative in their approach. But as we can see, Demetrius was very self-serving in all this, and he had dishonest reasoning about all of it. Um, and so, even to the point to where the crowd was just in an uproar. When you see a crowd, it probably somebody was sat there and kind of go, "Hey, don't you guys have jobs or something? Don't we do that every time we look on TV and see this? Don't you have jobs?" But here's this crowd; they're getting all uproar, and it, it's kind of funny, but kind of sad at the same time that they were they they didn't have a clue what was going on. They didn't know what they were hollering about, but they kept continuing to holler. So so Paul tried to get in there, couldn't, and so what happened? What happened? It spread. Now, who came to the rescue to get them calmed down? Was it Paul? Was it his people? Was it his traveling companions? Was it the people in the who came to calm the people down? All right. Okay. Well, let's read on. Um, and some of the crowd in 33, and some of the crowd concluded it was Alexander, since the Jews had put him forward, and having motioned with his hand, Alexander was intending to make defense to the assembly. And when they recognized that he was a Jew, a single outcry arose from them all as they shouted for about 2 hours. 2 hours. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. That's what I'm saying. This lesson right now, today, is, I don't think it's a coincidence. It's how do we deal with crowds like this? And because we're facing it right now in our country. But after quieting the multitude, the town clerk said, "Men of Ephesus, what man is there, after all, who does not know that the city of the Ephesus is a guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of the image which fell down from heaven?" Now, when I was reading through this, city clerk, who is like I guess you might say, the city manager or the head administrator of the city, he's the one that calmed them down. Okay, he's the one that, and even he is giving homage to the great Artemis. Okay, he recognizes that. So why did God allow the city clerk to be the one that calms the crowd down? Wouldn't this have been a great opportunity for Paul and his group to do that? Okay. So let's have a discussion here. Why is it the city clerk? We know God God is in control. Why is it that Artemis is the one? I mean, not Artemis, but why is the city clerk the one that calms them down? Okay. Did God use him then? I mean, in the calming, what eventually happened is Paul and his companions were saved. Who knows what could have happened if it kept on going and kept on escalating. You know, uh, yeah. And my point here is that God uses tools, people that we may not necessarily would have done. You know, I probably would have said, "Hey, let's, hey, Paul, get in there and do that defense." In fact, Alexander was trying to do that, and then they found out he was a Jew, and they got even more, more upset about things. So when the calming comes, when the calming comes, and it comes at a tool or at a resource that we are not saying, well, why do you do that? It really, every time I go over a ramp in traffic, especially in Dallas and Fort Worth or anywhere these big, you get these big, huge bridges and you're way up on top of I don't know who built that, the engineers that built that or the people that did that, but I pray God was with them every time, every time I'm amazed at this architecture, and I can guarantee you that not everybody worked on that project was a Christian. Or even some of them may not even believe in God, maybe an atheist, okay, or something. But who's at control? Who's in control? Couple of, we were eating dinner with a couple last night, and we were talking about the day's events and the things that are coming down over the last few days. And our friend, the lady, said, God is still in control. God is in control. And sometimes it's hard to remember. Well, I hate to say it's hard to remember, but then sometimes you shake your head and say, man, okay, God, we know you're in control. We believe it, but man, you know? And so, yeah, you're exactly right. And, we've had two men from the congregation the last week pass from that. And so, uh, yeah, it hits home. It does hit home. But God is still in control. Um, I meant to, excuse me, it's in my cell phone. I read a devotional this morning that I want to share with you guys. And it wasn't a part of this plan, but I can't. I have to. Okay. Um, Reading from Habakkuk 3:17 through 18. And most of you probably will recognize this as soon as I read it. It says, though the fig trees does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen, no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, and I will be joyful in God my Savior. Okay? Well, the guy who wrote this devotional went on to say, if you're in a fight, what would be your weapon of choice? Undoubtedly, worship might not be your first option, because singing is not a great defense mechanism or a tactic, or playing an instrument, or maybe, but nevertheless, worship is a weapon, and it's also a choice. And so, and then he says, at first glance, it might not seem like the writer in this Bible passage has nothing of material to her name or his name. No fig trees, no grapevines, no olives, no sheep, and no cattle. But if you go back and read it again, you'll see that he does have fig trees, just no figs. He has grapevines, but no grapes. He does have olive crops, just doesn't have any olives. She does have a sheep pen, just no sheep, and he has a stall, but no cattle. So in you reading this context, a person has tried and fell short. And again, here we are in a situation that there may be poverty, there may be situation that whatever we've done, we've tried and failed. And yet that's the deepest of disappointment. And then the guy who wrote this brought it home a little bit more. Can we relate? Okay. This guy that had the olive groves, the grapevines, put a great deal of investment and expectation into it. They planted the seeds, they built the pens, and invested a lot of money, and through no fault of their own, possibly, they have experienced tremendous failure. So can you relate? The relationship fell apart, and you could do nothing to prevent it. The economy crashed, and you could not slow it down. You worked hard for that degree, but you still got laid off. You brought the kids to church every Sunday, but they still made poor decisions. You failed and did not choose to, and in fact, you had no choice in the matter, and that's what hurts the most, the powerlessness. Don't we feel somewhat of the events that are going on? Don't we feel somewhat powerless? There are times when I do, but he goes on to say, but we must continue reading. Yet the author says, and what a great transition that is, yet I will rejoice and I'll be joyful in God, my Savior. Oh, what refreshing truth, said another, I still have a choice. So even though you didn't have a choice in some of the events that are going around your situation, the COVID hit wasn't your choice for sure. The riots that we say, and even people like Demetrius are going to do an incitement. What is our reaction? Our reaction, our biggest weapon is worship. It's prayer. And believe me, there are times when we have Christian friends that say, "I'm going to stand up for what's right." And I caution them to say, you follow what God wants you to do. And if that's what God wants you to do, then go for it. Do exactly what God wants you to do. But if you want to sit back and pray about it, or maybe take one person, if you can change one person's mind about a situation, then that's one person into favor of God. And so how do we change people though? How do we change people? I think it's one-on-one. Okay. Paul had a lot of experience, and he didn't, he went to synagogues when he first got to places, but he would talk. He would, sometimes he'd say, 3 months, sometimes even 3 years in a place, because people don't change overnight. We read here, boom, this happened, but we don't know, think about it. How long would it take us? How long did it take the Dutiles to build the church up in New Hampshire? Okay. How long does it take for certain events? I remember Shauna Turner, that's up in Minnesota, having great success with her congregation right now. But for a long time, she was kind of concerned because she didn't see any. And then she had the full-time minister that was helping, was with her, uh, resigned and went to another congregation. He's back up there now, but not working with the congregation, but he's back. And then they had another full-time minister quit, and she was basically the only one that was working with these guys. But that's what needed to happen, because now the guys have turned around and they're starting to be leaders in that congregation themselves. Okay. And so God's always there. God's always there. But she just kept praying, kept working and praying. And she was concerned, but she gave her devotion, and us at Greenlawn gave her support, and it turned around. And that's how Paul does. Paul goes to the inside and converts or works with the individuals. Yeah, the crowds are great, but how many of the crowds do you get? What's the percentage? Go to the individual. So let's talk a little bit more of what when we talk about Demetrius and people like that are inside, they want to do harm. They want to bring people down for their own benefit. How do we deal with situations like that? Let's turn over to 1 Corinthians 13 and read there. And when we're talking about, what our goal is, what our role is, let's 13, 5 through 6. Well, let's start in 4. For love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrongs suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. And so that is how we ought to conduct ourselves. Is these people that are inciting crowds, we don't take part of that. Okay. So Have you ever been incited? I mean, I'm not saying to storm the Capitol, of course, but has anybody ever incited you to where you might have done something that you know, that you shouldn't have done? Okay. Back, I'll just give you back early in my career. Uh, this guy that I was working with, I mean, real early in my career when I was extremely immature, business wise, and probably, still growing up as a young adult. He got the people incited because we were not getting paid enough. We were not. We were getting paid lower than this other CPA firm across town, or even the ones in Dallas. Well, we know now that CPA firms in Dallas pay a lot more than they do in Lubbock anyway, even to this day, as far as I remember, as far as I can tell. Um, well, he got everybody upset. People were quitting, and he quit, of course, but everybody else got upset, and the ones that stayed finally said, well, maybe we shouldn't complain, but there's those of us uh, that quit, and it was tough a little bit. Going from one job to another is tough anyway. But when you leave on bad terms like that, you kind of feel guilty, saying, "Man, what? Why did I follow that guy? I could have had a child. It was okay, you know." And so I learned from that, but I let that guy control me. Okay, I let that guy uh, just just send me in the wrong direction. So it made me say, have you ever been manipulated by someone? Well, just like I told you about that guy, also there's another person I was stated about in the very beginning. How does that make you feel? Does it make you like what? It makes you feel stupid. Yeah. Makes you feel, I feel violated and it makes me feel guilty because I should have known better. Okay. I should have known better. I should have applied my Christian principles and not get manipulated like that. And so I saw the mask come off, so here it comes. And what? Yeah. 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 And but that's okay as long as they don't talk. No, I'm just playing. Hey, okay. This is not being recorded. I guess it is. Okay. I didn't mean it. Okay. Well, I kept saying when we were shut down, I had a woman serving me Lord's Supper every Sunday. You know, so anyway, uh, but you're right, and I'm glad you brought that up because that does bring it home a little bit more. So what is our reaction? Well, let's turn over to First Timothy, chapter 2. First Timothy chapter 2, and somebody read verses. Well, I'm on microphone. I guess I need to because the people at home can't hear. First of all, and he's talking to Timothy, of course. First of all, then I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgivings be made on behalf of all men, for kings and all who are in authority, in order that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. So we're praying for the kings, praying for our authorities, and I am praying honestly practically every day for Joe Biden, for President Biden, because his success is good for us. Okay. Uh, Now I don't agree with all his policies, which might not be good for us, but still we need to pray for them. And who put him there? God put him there. And God didn't promise us. In fact, in the Gospels, Jesus says, "You will suffer." Okay, you will suffer. So it's not if. That's a definite. And for his saints, so we need to pray for all those that are in authority. Let's turn over to Romans 13. Romans 13, verses 1 through 5. Let every person be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, he who resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they have opposed will receive condemnation about themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God, for it is a minister of God for you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath upon the one who practices evil. Wherefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. Now, in all the scripture that we read through there, does it say there that we have to agree with everything that our government says? Okay? There are definitely things that I cannot be, when they say we are to be subject to our authorities that God put there in place, does that mean that we have to agree and go along and with abortion? No. Does that mean we have to agree with some of these other policies that are coming? They're just they're going. This is an abomination to the Lord. Okay, but we pay our taxes, our taxpayers. Now, if we have a chance to, to stand up, and God gives us the voice to do it, maybe that's what He wants us to do. Yes, Jay. Right. Right. Exactly. And now, can we apply this to every little single thing that we're facing today? And I think we can. I believe we can, because we can still, and in Revelation, and God has His remnant. He calls this out, and I think it's Revelation 18. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but you know He's going to bring His wrath down, and He's telling us, "Hey, come out." When He's telling us to come out, that maybe in symbolic is saying, yeah, you're there, you're placed there, you're in Lubbock, Texas, um, and and yeah, but don't be a part of them. Don't be a part of that. Okay, and and like I said, sometimes God knows when you need to speak. God knows when you need to speak up. God knows when you need to be silent. Okay, talking about what? Oh yeah. Oh no. No, actually, How many people actually, honestly, truly stop at stop signs? Actually stop to a dead still. Good for you. I, I got a friend. Well, he's my brother-in-law's father was a minister, and he laughed about one time that he got a ticket because the police said you came to an oozing stop. You know, it's an oozing stop. Just okay, but you know, you've got a point there. You got a point. We don't. None of us are perfect, but you know, when it comes to the situation that we're in this world today, and I'm not going to be. I mean, I'm not the. I may not say the right things, but if we apply and use our biggest weapon is worship. You know, God is in control, and just believe that. Okay, I've come to believe to that I'm excited about the unknown. Can we honestly say that? You know, Abraham went to a place that he didn't have any clue where he was going. Was he excited about it? I kind of want to say he was, because there's a kind of a peace. There's a peace that comes over you when you have no clue what tomorrow's going to bring, but you know God's going to control. And cause look what He's done, but in the past, look where we are now, and look what He's done. Look what we experience, and that makes us excited about what's coming tomorrow because God's in control. Right. And he believed God for his promises. Yes. Yeah. 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 So the media. I mean, there's so many issues going on today. You know, the cancel culture, or what do they call that? You know, the things are happening all over the place, and we just need to, as Christians, sit back and just okay. And really, we need to be the calmers. You know, the people we come in contact with at work and in our family, we need to be the ones that just, hey, it's okay. It's calm. If you notice back in the story about Demetrius, that Paul did not campaign to remove Artemis from worship. He did not campaign to do that. I think he would have taken a wrong approach. What he did is went in and preached Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's the truth. Right. Speak the truth. Right. You've probably been in meetings, you guys in business and stuff have been in meetings. I've been told all this time, if you have a, if you don't like something, okay, if you don't like something, you can say you don't like it, but if you don't say anything unless you have something to replace it, you know. That's what's hard. And it's hard, isn't it? It really is. But that doesn't mean we have to do it. Yes, Wendy. Goodness. Yeah. You see it all the time. Good. And well, to go back on what you're saying and probably answer your question over Wendy is to also if if he's in control and you're the tool to say something, then he'll give you the words to do it and give you the there's and but yeah, well, but we need to do it in an orderly manner. You know, here's the thing about what Paul did about Demetrius and anywhere he went, he did not go in to say get rid of these gods, get rid of even in Greek, on the hill of when he was in Athens, you know, he didn't say get rid of all this stuff. He gave them the alternative. He gave them Jesus Christ. He preached that. So in other words, I'm not just going to wipe this all out and not have anything there. You know, he went in and said Jesus is the answer, not and he let them make that decision to follow Jesus, not Artemis. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's not right. And if well, we would be if he chose to do that. Exactly. And one of my favorite stories about, and we're over time, but one of my favorite stories about David uh, uh, went, he was going to go into battle, and he went and counted all his men and all his resources, and then God punished him. And he go, why did I punish him? Well, you didn't ask me, you didn't inquire me, you didn't put your faith in me. Now, if he had asked God and inquired of him, God would have said, go count your men and your resources, get prepared. Probably could have told him might have done the same thing, but it's the attitude that he went in and says, hey, I'm doing this, not God. His arrogance, right? Right. So, well, anyway, good lesson and well, good discussion. Thank you, guys.